While some students come to their research project with a clear research question, there are many others that come to this point with no specific question for their research. And so there's pressure, and it can very quickly go into anxiety. So what I'm gonna address in here are questions that are necessary to conduct a research study. It's important that a student talk to other people. What are the topics that other people are considering? What are their interests? Look at other writings that are available. Set aside some time to spend in the library, going through titles, research papers, and reading abstracts, and identifying those that are most important or most interesting. It's also very important to look through the dissertations of previous students. Um, it's good to think about your interest. Which topic do you find interesting, and is there an element that could be developed into a research project? Is there a related topic of interest? And is there something in the course that one feels skeptical about, that perhaps maybe warrants further study? And also, we need to keep in mind, keep asking the question why. This may be helpful in identifying a research question to address. So it's important to remember that we can replicate an existing study in a different setting. We can explore an area that is under researched. We can extend previous studies. We can look at studies limitations, and perhaps maybe look at how we can address those limitations. Develop or test out methodologies or methods, and look at the applying theoretical ideas to the problems in the real world. Um, we should be able to realistically look at the practical implications of what we are doing in terms of research. What kind of time requirement are we looking at? Necessary traveling? Are we paying close attention to the type of equipment that we need? Is the population that we have an interest in researching, are they even available? Are they accessible? And what kind of costs are we looking at? In providing an overview of institutional approval and issues concerning human and animal participants that every researcher should know, institutional approval basically it looks at four questions when it involves human studies, and these are questions that we need to look for answers as we pursue our research. So number one is, does the study involve human participants? And are number two, are the participants prospectively assigned to an intervention? Three, is the study designed to evaluate the effect of the intervention on the participants? And four, is the effect that will be evaluated a health-related, biomedical, or behavioral outcome? And if the answer is yes, then we are looking at our research. Now, according to the National Bioethics Advisory Council, whether testing a new medical treatment or interviewing people about their personal habits and such, or observing how they live with groups, research obviously looks for learning something new. And so there's been many occasions where researchers do not treat participants as persons, but rather as mere objects of a study. And so it's important for us to understand in the research study where humans or animals are part of, it is important to um, uh, assign one or more intervention where we need to assign one or more interventions, um, that the effects of those interventions don't affect the persons, don't affect the animals. And so, how to choose a sample size, research instruments, and methods for aligning a proper research procedure. Well, we know that a sample is a selection of respondents chosen in a way that represents the entire population, and that's as a good example, as a good as possible. And instantly, a new question comes to forefront: how many people do we need? And is that number correct? So, in looking at what size is correct, um, we need to consider the margin of error, and this is positive and negative deviation, and so it'll allow us to look at our survey results. The deviation between the opinions of the respondents and the opinion of the entire population. So, for example, we suppose that we set our margin of error at 5%. If 90% of our survey respondents like the fall 2016 line or what have you, a 5% margin of error means that we can be sure that between 85 and 95% of the entire population actually likes the fall 2016 line. When we look at the confidence level, this is going to tell us how often the percentage of the population likes the example of fall 2016 line, and that it actually falls within the boundaries of margin of error. Or following our previous example, it can tell us how sure we can be that 85 and 95% of the population actually likes what we're presenting in terms of the sample of fall 2016 line. Another aspect of choosing research instruments includes length and complexity. In outdoor experience based programs, instruments are often in the field, and many times these programs range of participants, and can also have implications on language. The shorter and simpler an instrument is, in terms of reliability and validity, the potential, the greater the instrument potential to be applicable. So the idea is to develop an instrument which can provide a maximum amount and type of unique information in a short amount of time. We're also looking at relevance to the program. Many experiments make it easy for individuals to participate through the range of life skills. There are different programs that must be made available in terms of leadership and such. Sensitivity to change. The scoring system is important, and two issues that have to be considered in developing an instrument for measuring change is that they have to be reliable, and they have to correlate with the kind of experiment that we're conducting. When we consider outlining the research method, the section, basically what we want to do is describe how we're going to conduct the experiment, the type of participants, instructions, manipulations, and questionnaires that we're going to be using. So for example, in terms of participants, we want to look at who they are they male, female, their age, the culture, the random assignment conditions. Um, so, for example, participants that were, 80 males, and we had 80 females, and they were all enrolled in a university, and their ages range from 19 to 41, with the mean age of 19. So we want to describe how they were selected. It was randomly assigned. Um, how were they presented in terms of sample. 61% were white, 22% were Asian, so on and so forth. We also want to look at the materials. This is a in the materials section. It's important for us to be concise. It's important for us to include the name of the scale, how many items, if we're using a scale, the sample questions that we're using. We want to mention the instrument that we're using. How participants responded to the instruments. Any items that may have been, like reverse scored or recoded. What lower scores or higher scores indicate. Or, we also want to make mention of the reliability of the scale. So, and then we want to also make reference to procedure. And that is, we want to make sure that we cover our bases when we're describing the nature of the process that we utilized. So the nature of the participants in terms of the experiment, the manner by which the independent variable was manipulated, the manner by which the dependent variable was measured, and any debriefing statement that we want to include in there. So for example, the participants read the instructions typed on the cover page of the booklet. They read about an attempt to investigate the perception skills of people, and that their answers would be compared to other universities across the country, so on and so forth. We want to look at the dependent measures, manipulation check, and lastly the debriefing. So, participants are important to the experiment. So these are the ideas behind the Module 7 assignment, and we have a very clear understanding as far as what the questions we want to address to conduct a research study. We're address describe the sample size of research, how we came to the methods, and for outlining the proper research procedure.